Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Could you give us the bird's eye view of where you're at today, and then we'll trek back and do a little bit of origin story talk?
Well, I'm sitting in Charlestown, Massachusetts, which is Boston. It's a neighborhood just right next to downtown and the North End, really historic neighborhood. It's where the Battle of Bunker Hill was fought, and that monument is, you can pretty much see it from outside my door. So that's where I am. I have a studio, about a 2,000 square foot studio here on Main Street in Charlestown. I do a ton of local acts, artists, bands, things like that. I also do a lot of stuff from sort of mid-level talent from around the country. I do a lot of stuff with Berklee. I'm in Boston, and I'm running, I would say a small to mid-sized studio. I've been doing it in this location for 21 years.
And the name of your studio is Chill House, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Chill House Studios. It's online, all that stuff.
And how many rooms is it around? Obviously you got a control room because you're talking to me from it, but tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, so it's a storefront. It was built in a storefront on Main Street in a commercial district. So I have a like Italian cafe on one side, and I have a convenience store on the other side, and I'm in a row of like shops. So you have a street level floor that you walk in, and there's my upstairs live room and an ISO booth, and then this control room, and then there's an airlock behind me and an airlock in the front where you come in the door, and then these rooms are floated. So I can be in here doing whatever at any time of day or night, and they can be enjoying their espresso next door, and they're not bothered by what's going on, which is fantastic. And then it has a basement, and the basement has a piano in it, a Yamaha acoustic grand piano, and all the guitar amps and the bass amps and all that stuff is in the basement. It's the same, obviously, footprint size as the upstairs, but it's not subdivided into rooms really. So it has a bathroom, but I can use that as a larger space. So it's like a second tracking room. I do a lot of video down there. I do a lot of, especially jazz bands, when they want to be with the piano in the same room. We do those down there. I do a lot of video down there. But then also when I'm doing like studio type recording, meaning making a record where you want as much isolation as possible, I'll have the band upstairs with me where I'm looking through my glass into the live room. The drums are in there, but I'll have and the players will be in there, but the amps will all be in the basement in different places so that they're isolated, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's probably hard to visualize all that. So it's basically a studio on two levels. I mean, I wish I had one level with twice the square footage, but it's just the nature of this building and this space, and I guess it's the trade-off of being like right in the city, which I like, and I have to kind of work with the space that I have available.
I can already see that I would have a hard time resisting going next door to the Italian place to get an espresso every day.
Right. They're great people. I love those guys. So a lot of clients go get stuff there. I get sandwiches there all the time. Super nice folks. And it's great to be in a neighborhood, in a place where you have all these little shops and things right next door and stuff.
Yeah. That ecosystem of other businesses is really an unintended benefit, especially the convenience store.
There's several of those. So it's a Main Street in Charlestown is, Boston is neighborhoods. It's a city of neighborhoods, basically. It's a city of there's Boston, but then there's all the little towns that surround Boston that are all kind of glued together. You just kind of pass from one to the next. And Charlestown is one of those. Charlestown's like a neighborhood. It's a town because it originally was a town, but it's part of Boston. But yes, it's good. Main Street in Charlestown is like a mile long, and it's just most of it is a lot of it is retail and small. Not really any. Well, there's a Domino's, but not really a lot of chains. All kind of small business kind of places.
The top level, so you got a control room, a live room. Do you have other ISO booths as well on the top?
I just have one ISO booth in the top level, one proper ISO booth in the live room, but I use I use the control room as an ISO booth too if I need to. Like I'm going to have something coming up next week where I'm probably going to put either the upright bass in here with me or maybe the horns, but I'm going to try to put the horns in the other ISO booth if they'll let me.
Do
because you can see
sessions
through.
do sessions expand, like you have people on the top floor and people in the basement?
You do that when the one time, yes, you can do that. It's all tied together with tie lines that go into patch bays and all that stuff. Anything I can send to any, obviously microphone can go in any room and come to my bay, but I have this whole network that I've built of plug a guitar cord into this box in the control room and it can come out in any other room in the place and all that kind of stuff. Speaker cables, same way, MIDI, it shows how old it is, MIDI, back in the MIDI days. But the one situation where that is done most often is if you have someone playing the acoustic piano. I can't bring the piano upstairs. So if I have a band playing and it involves a live piano take, I'll have the piano player down there and the band up here. If it's not a situation where they all want to be in the same room, because if it's like a rock thing, it's hard to isolate the piano.
Yeah. What about video? Do you have the ability for people upstairs and downstairs to see each other over video?
We do it with like iPads and iPhones and stuff. I have not put in a closed circuit system. I actually do have coax routed for that, but I haven't done that. So no, I just listen. I just did a big piano session 2 days ago, and I don't really need to see them. I can hear them, it's fine, and they can hear me on the phones. But it would be cool to have, and I thought of that, is try to put in a closed circuit system so that there would be like a big screen down there and you could see upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should do that.
When you say iPads and iPhones, are you talking about using FaceTime or Zoom?
Exactly. Yeah. Usually you find that it's not an issue because they can hear. But in the circumstances where it is an issue, Zoom or FaceTime, anything like that, like they can be on the band leader.
And that's kind of cool because being that everybody can hear everybody in headphones, you could just turn the volume down on the device and just have the video as a reference.
Definitely. I should probably put a system in, and I've thought about it, and it's sort of halfway wired for one. It hadn't really been a huge need. Like nobody's really gotten too bent out of shape about it. Because when once they're comfortable, it's about the sound anyway. It's the listening. And I have the whole system, the hearback system, where they have the satellite boxes. They can make their own band mixes and stuff. Yeah.
No, I see the value in using, the iPhone, iPads, Android, whatever you have to create a video call. That's so less expensive than to install a whole video thing.
Right.
And everybody's got their own personal device that they know. When it comes to the basement, you said it's the same square footage, of course, as the top. Makes sense. However, do you ever use the basement as a live chamber?
You can. The live chamber is the airlock in the front. That's the one, because so when you walk in the front door of the building, you're in a you're in a room before you walk into the live room. So it's about 8 feet from the front of the actual building to the front of the floated live room. There's no second floor on this building, and it's got a flat roof, but it's sloped backwards, meaning it's higher at the front. It's like this. So if you're standing just inside the front door when you're walking off the street and you look up, you're looking up about 20 or 30 feet, and it's all dry. It's just drywall painted. So that's a huge live room. And I do that, a lot. So you put like an 87 out there and you crack the door with the drums going on, and it turns into When the Levee Breaks or whatever you want,
Okay.
Totally.
Okay. Very cool. Well, let's talk about, where did you grow up?
I am from North Carolina, from Statesville and sort of the western-ish part of the state, and ended up in Boston to go to Berklee, and then went to Berklee for a couple years and started working in studios. So, and then just kind of haven't left.
Growing up, was the musical influence primarily from school, or did you play an instrument in school?
I always played music. Not really in schools. They didn't really have much. I'm from a small town. There wasn't any music really. I guess you could do marching band, but I played music with all my friends. I played guitar. I was really into a lot of classic rock. I was really into the blues, especially sort of the blues of the beginning, the 20s, whatever, to about the 60s, 70s. And I was really into bluegrass because there was a lot of that in Western North Carolina. That's sort of the home of a lot of that kind of music. So I was always out seeing live bluegrass, seeing live blues. I especially love to go track down the older generation of guys, especially the blues guys. So I was fortunate that I think I was able to absorb some of that stuff while those people were still with us. And so those are the things I loved, and so I grew up just playing music, playing an instrument. I went to college, not at Berklee, and I had a band, and we had a ton of fun and all that kind of stuff. And then got out of college and worked a real job for a while, and kept doing the band, and then got the opportunity to come to Berklee, which I did. So then it kind of, I just stayed with music.
Yeah. Well, tell me about how recording became part of your life. What was
Sure.
What was the inception?
So I was always the guy in the band that did any recording that got done. So I was always the kind of the archivist, the guy that made the demos or whatever. But I'm old enough to be way pre-digital. So I had a 4-track. I had a Tascam 424 eventually. And, like my college band and my post-college band, we did go into studios a few times, but I would make all the demos on the 4-track. So I was kind of always interested in that side of the equation. And then when I went to Berklee, that continued on, and I was always recording on my own as much as I was doing anything else. So I just always had that interest in studios and recording. And after a couple years at Berklee, I got the opportunity to work at a, proper studio in Boston. And I just loved it. And I just went in head first. It was just pre-computer, like late 90s. So they were an ADAT studio. You probably remember those. It was that era, sort of after tape, but before computer.
How did you get that opportunity? How did that come about?
I answered an ad on the Berklee job board. I was looking for, it was an internship is what it was. And it turned into a job later, or I became a staff engineer. But I was looking for an internship, and they were hard to get. They're hard to get now. They were hard to get then. And I don't know, man. I answered it, and they let me have a shot. It was a studio that had 3 rooms. It was a big place, and it had a huge intern staff, and I got a spot,
How is your knowledge of recording technology when you entered into that situation?
Fair to
probably,
Midland. Yeah, I learned a ton. I learned a ton at that place, because all of a sudden I was in a place where it was being done for real, and they had they had the stuff, they had a huge amount of analog gear. They were running ADAT. They were running 4 ADAT machines in sync. They had a board, and they had a ton of great mics, and they had a big space with multiple ISO rooms, and the guys were all kind of my age. I was sort of mid-20s at that time. So yeah, it just was all of a sudden I was kind of in the middle of it.
Did you learn a lot?
Oh, I learned everything. I learned a tremendous amount, and like the mentorship thing. The guy that was the chief engineer there, Dave Lefkowitz, always let me, was very nice and very, told me whatever. I got to watch all of his sessions or be a part of his sessions, help him set up his sessions. Eventually he started, if he wanted to go get lunch, I could run the sessions while, he started to be able to trust me. But yeah, just learn. And so I was at that point in my life, I was doing it as much as possible, but I was also I was reading, tape op and early message boards, and there really wasn't YouTube yet. Reading books, man, I still have books. It's a shelf full of books I would read, and I was absorbing it just as much as possible. And also I had just been at Berklee, so I knew tons of bands and musicians, and I started doing this thing at that studio, what they called Midnight Madness, and they would let a band come in for $200 from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so I did a lot of those because I was young and no kids and all that, and stay up all night. And that was great because the band was getting a little demo or whatever for $200, and I was getting to learn on the job. I really feel like learning in the on the job or in the moment is probably the best way to really get good at this stuff. So yeah, I could make some mistakes and whatever, but it was a win for everyone.
What was the next step in your journey from there?
It was a big old giant building, and it had 3 studios. It had an A room that was really big, all hardwood, looked like a ski lodge. It had these like lava rocks. It was beautiful. And then and that was on the 2nd floor of this big giant building in Back Bay in Boston. They had a B room, which was smaller, obviously, and they had a C room, which was tiny. And I think like, the whole environment was changing right around when computers started to become viable, and these big, studios that had multiple rooms, they had a lot of overhead. The guys that they leased that space from just a guy that owned the building, and they had a lot of money to cover every month, and the computer thing was eating into everybody. I don't know, just big giant rooms with multiple rooms were starting to not be, you sort of saw the writing on the wall. So anyway, having said all that, I leased the B room with the guy that leased the C room. So there was a guy in the little teeny tiny room. The studio that I was working for at that time, they were like, you know what, our B room is trying to undercut our A room because we're offering it for less money, and so people are trying to go down there and do huge sessions in a tiny room instead of renting the big room, which is what's meant, built for that. So the guy, Eric Welsh, who recommended me for this podcast, he and I teamed up and took out a lease on the B room. He needed a little bit bigger space, and we were busy enough that we were able to make that happen. So they kept running the A room. We started running the B room, and then we found a person to rent out the C room. So again, it was kind of a win for everybody.
Were they still having the same problem where people would say, oh, I'll just go to the B room with you guys running it?
I guess there wasn't a ton of competition between us. Also at that, the guys that owned that place, which is no longer there, they were sort of trying to, I think, kind of figure a way out of it. And they ended up selling the whole lease on that whole building to another couple of guys. And that, I don't know how much you want to know all this story, but that's how I ended up here. Basically, we were doing our thing in the B room in this place in Boston. And then sort of everything started to fall apart. And so Eric and I found this building that we're in now, and we bought it. We bought the property. We bought the building.
You bought the building?
Which is huge.
Bravo.
so frightening at the time, but it has turned out to be, a great thing.
And this is something that I've kind of ranted and raved about over the years. I've always felt that if you're going to run a studio, if you can possibly own the building, that's the best way to do it, because
100%.
You're building this equity. You have an asset that you can borrow against if you need to. And if you want to cash out, you can of course sell the building. I just think it's the best possible situation to be in, although very difficult for many to get into.
Yes. Yes to all of those. And another one, which I've seen countless times here, you control your own destiny.
Absolutely.
You don't own the building, no matter what all the intentions are. One day, the person, the lady, whoever owns the building, who promised you they would never kick you out, they sell it to become condos.
That's right. Minds change, economies shift, people grow older. Landlords, I've seen situations where, persons had the same landlord, and then that landlord finally dies, and the whether it's the siblings or the children or somebody in the family says, we're getting rid of the whole thing. Sorry.
Totally. I've seen that time and again. And, the thing about studios is that, that build out you do, the infrastructure type build out, you can't take it with you, and you soundproof, you float rooms. Nobody wants that in a condo. Nobody wants any of that stuff. It's purpose built for your situation, and it doesn't really travel, so if you got to split and go do it again, it's expensive, man. And you walk away from a lot.
Can you talk about some of the advantages that we haven't named when it comes to owning your own studio and what that means? Maybe stuff that people aren't even thinking about?
Well, I think it's the security, and it's just you own it. So, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, obviously. I'm the guy on the roof when the roof needs fixing. I'm the guy, anything that needs to get done, I'm doing it. When I took the whole AC apart last year, whatever. Or obviously you pay people when you need to do whatever. But it's just the security, like you said, the equity, sort of your because we had come out of this situation, like I mentioned before, where we had a lease, and then the lease got sold to someone else, and then it was like a gray area. Well, now we signed this lease with this group of people. Now this group of people owns the lease, and it just was was hard to operate under that environment. And when we did finally have to go, you know, we were busy. We got a calendar, we're booked, and we're sitting there looking at like, oh no, you know? So the security, the peace of mind, the equity, the, you know, like it's like my retirement plan or something, you know, sell this building. I've owned it 21 years, keep hanging on to it. And because when we came into this particular neighborhood, you know, the neighborhood has just really, really gentrified tremendously since we came here 21 years ago. You know, it's a neighborhood right next to downtown in a healthy city.
I know the value of that building is going up every year.
Just they're not making more land in Boston. So it's in a commercial zone. It has air rights for like 3 more stories. I mean, I know exactly what this will be when I'm done with it. Somebody will tear the whole thing down, and because there are a bunch of them on this street, it'll be retail on the first floor and condos for as high as they'll let them go, you know?
And of course, there may come the day where somebody comes to you and makes you an offer you can't refuse just because it's just ridiculous.
I get them all the time. I had one on the street on Saturday night.
Really?
Well, they didn't give me a number, but you know, the interest. I'm like, hey, just, you know, send me an email, call me, give me a number, whatever, you know.
One of the things that I think people don't think about when you own a building and it's a business, that building is a tax write-off.
Yep.
Everything that you put into it, hey, we need new air conditioning. That's a capital expenditure that goes, you know, on your taxes. Let's talk about the business itself. Where do your clients come from?
Almost everything I do, everybody I work with, it comes from word of mouth, almost everything. So I've been here a long time. I've done it a long time. I'm in a bunch of different circles, cliques, whatever you want to call it. You know, Boston is a very healthy arts, music, food, culture town. You know, it just is. And we're very fortunate for that. And that's why a place like mine can work, can survive. But it's all people I know. I do something for somebody, they tell somebody else, or I do something and word gets around, or it's a video, whatever. So it's almost all word of mouth. I mean, in the past, I've tried to advertise, and I will admit, and this was when I was looking at the email you sent and asking about like mistakes. And we all make mistakes. Probably it's my blind spot for like marketing is probably my greatest ongoing mistake, because I don't really advertise, and I don't really do probably the things I should do with trying to engage more with advertising on social media and all that stuff. I do a lot of social media, but I don't, you know what I'm saying? So, but it's all word of mouth. It's all just being a part of the community and just knowing tons of people. Do certain genres inevitably come to you? That's a great question. Not really at all. I do really across the board, all kinds of stuff. I'll give you a bunch of examples, and that's what keeps it so interesting and so fresh and so fun. I do all the recording work for an orchestra in Lowell, so it's it's with a focus on modern classical and living composers. I've done tons of reggae stuff, from people in Jamaica to even the older generation to modern reggae acts, West Coast reggae acts, soul music, blues music. I do a lot of jazz, all kinds of jazz, be it trad or more fusiony stuff because of the Berklee connection. I do a lot of folk music. There's a big folk scene in Boston. I do a lot of punk, a lot of indie kind of punk. I do all the vocal production for a sort of a metal heavy kind of band out of New Hampshire that's doing really well. I do some hip hop. That's sort of always on I think anybody that runs a studio has that little bit of that on their plate. I just did a big hip hop night the other night. So it really is across the board, but I do think that most of what I do is people coming here to play something, sing something, or have a group of people playing something. So I'm not so much on I don't really make beats. I don't really make backing tracks. It's more of like people come here to sit down and play stuff. It could be your traditional rock kind of guitar, bass, drums singer. I do a lot of ethnic, a lot of African music, a lot of music from all over the world. It could be, whatever. I do a lot of yoga stuff with the glass bowl, the crystal bowls, and, all that. Just coming here to actually play. So that's a focus, but genre-wise, it really is all over the map, and that's great. It keeps it super interesting and super fun. Always learning, man. Always hearing new things and learning new stuff.
I know it's very common for all of us to look to other engineers for inspiration. Are there other studios and studio or business models of studios that you look to for inspiration that you've kind of looked at over the years?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly are studios in this town that are kind of stalwarts. Q Division is probably the one of all of them because it's been around for a really long time. They just renovated it and updated it. It's beautiful. It's a big, a lot bigger space than I have. Mad Oak, Benny Grotto is really well known, really well respected. There's some crossover of me working with people that he works with, a little bit of sending files back and forth, that kind of thing. Those two studios are great. Benny's great. There are a lot of studios in Boston. There really are. Big ones, small ones. There are always new ones, and it's even hard to kind of keep up. But it's interesting, like, I think us studio guys, we 37-foot Sean McLaughlin down in Rockland, he's great. And I worked with him at that original studio I started at years and years and years ago. But yeah, I mean, I think there's like that kind of group of folks that are like about my age-ish who've been at it for about as long as I have. And then, they're always, Berklee's got an MP&E program, so there's always the next group coming out, next young class.
As a studio and having the experience that you have, what advice do you have to other studio owners about how to run a studio, how to stay, regardless of whether or not you rent or own, how to maintain the business long term?
There are a few things. Like, I've always thought in my case, like, you can't let your client base get old with you. You have to stay young as much as possible. Try to keep youth coming in the door. In some ways, I think music is a young person's game because they've got the energy and they're not tied down with the responsibilities of family and all that kind of stuff that we get ourselves into. So I try to stay young. I try to stay, super positive. Whenever somebody comes in here to do something, it's them. It's their idea, their passion, their art that they're trying to get across. So you just really treat it all with utmost respect. And I think if you give respect, you'll get it back. Keep your overhead low. I mean, one thing long time ago, I don't have any gear on a credit card. Never have, never will. If I'm going to buy something, I pay for it. So I keep my overhead as low as possible. I don't get into gear debt. Just try to keep all that really manageable because you're going to have months that are better than other months. So you got to be, able to not get swallowed up by it.
Do you feel pressure to have certain pieces of gear?
No, not really. But I do think I kind of cover what I need. And that's a great question because, if I look back 25 years, like I started with, I remember when I bought a 414, I was like, okay, here we go, and now I look and I've got all this stuff, but I bought it so incrementally. Like I have I have everything I need. I don't really need anything else. There's not really a lot that I do where I'm like, you know what? I can't do that because I don't have that. It gets into more like a wish thing at this point. It's like, would you love to have that? Sure. And when it makes sense to upgrade, do whatever I need to do, I'll do it. But, the digital technology is always changing, but the analog is not. So if you buy, I've always tried to save up and buy things that will go the long haul. So I'll wait and buy something that, I'm not going to buy like the cheapest thing on the market or whatever that, and upgrade. I'll get a nice mic. I'll get something that'll work for me, or guitar or amp or whatever it might be.
The realities of studio ownership today are very different than what they were in the 80s and the 90s in terms of keeping up with the Joneses being other studios and the sense of competition and the need to have, a Neve or an SSL or whatever it is, to stay relevant and be considered professional. Nowadays, the gear choices and the options are so wide open of what you could do as long as you get the result that people are looking for.
And that's what it's all about. Yep. If you're producing great stuff, most people that come in here, they don't care really. They're not like cork sniffing the microphones. You know what I'm saying?
I love that term, cork sniffing.
Some people, you get it, but
yeah.
most people, yes, it's about the gear. And I feel like personally, I have enough good quality stuff. I've got 23 boutique outboard pre's, for anything from tube stuff to API to Great River to just looking around, Universal Audio stuff, whatever. Enough good functional mics, vintage Neumanns, modernish Neumanns, AKGs, Schurz, Sennheiser, all the stuff, the stuff.
Yeah.
Royer, whatever. So, but it's the vibe, it's the gear and it's the capture, but it's the vibe. Like, do you have a place where people feel comfortable to give you what they're trying to give you,
Yeah. Do you have a family?
I do. I am married for a very long time, and I have 2 girls, age 6 and 12.
Okay. So how do you keep everybody happy, including you, the family, the business, and how does it all work together?
Right. That's a great question. So my wife also is self-employed. She's in graphic design. She's a branding specialist, creative director type. So she's in creative. So she and I are both creative people. She in a different medium than me. So I have flexibility, as does she, with this job, because I make my own schedule. And so it's a constant communication thing, especially when you have kids and they start getting in school and in after school activities and everything like that. So she and I just communicate all the time. You got the kids today. I got the kids today. We got this on this day. We got this on this day. I've got this coming up. I've got a band, in November, I've got a whole bunch of, I'm not going to be around for a few days at a time, because I'll have, back to back 15-hour sessions or whatever. But, I do a lot of work where there's not a client here, which is like post work, mixing, mastering, editing. And so I can schedule myself for that. So, we'll get the kids off to school and I'll come down here and work. And then around, 1:30, they're going to start getting home. And about 2:33, I'll go home and hang out for the afternoon, make dinner, and then I'll come back and work until the middle of the night, and take care of what I need to. So the flexibility is huge for me. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, to be able to kind of make my own schedule. And if she has events and things that she needs to do, she's going to a conference, then I'm on duty, then, I just won't schedule myself for those times. And that's enormous and makes it all really, really rewarding, because I love what I do. I really do. I love doing this. I love everything about it, but I also love my kids and I love my family. And I love the fact that I'm able to figure out a way to navigate being able to give myself to all of it,
scheduling wise, I think that's where I sometimes am challenged in terms of conflicts.
Yeah.
I booked this thing. Oh, that's the day so-and-so's got this going on. We were supposed to, and you're like, oh my God. So how do you all navigate your schedule?
With myself and my wife, we just communicate constantly, We have a calendar at home on the wall that has the family stuff. It's got softball for the older one. It's got cheerleading for the younger one. It's got all the important dates, and you just have to really be on it. I don't know. It's there and it's in my mind. And if I book far out, if I book a month or more out, then that's, I'm kind of free to do that. And then I just let everybody know, whatever, that's what I did. And so then, and she's the same way, she has this big conference coming. So I know about that, a month or 2, 3, whatever in advance. So I just know to watch out for those dates. It's communication, constant communication.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's communication. However you achieve that communication is really
right.
What's important.
Right.
Long term, I'm gonna make an assumption here. You tell me if I'm wrong. I don't see you leaving this building until you're done.
Yeah. So, this is something I haven't really talked about with many people. I'm 51, so my parents are about 23 years ahead of me. My wife's parents are about 35 years ahead of her when she's 2 years younger than I am. We're going to have a change, all of us. It's a life cycle change. Our parents are going to move to a different place or move on from whatever, So there could be a change. But as long as I'm in Boston, I'm going to stay in this building unless somebody walks down the street and offers me a bunch of money I can't say no to. Because, I could theoretically take it somewhere else. What I really need is this, what I'm sitting you can't see, but I need my mix zone, with all my stuff. But that's a desk. I could put that probably in a lot of places, and then I could go somewhere and track, But we can't do it at my house. I don't have a big enough house to put any of it in that. So probably yes. I would say as long as I'm in Boston, I'm going to be in this building and in this space. And then there's probably going to come a time when I end up with an opportunity. My parents live on a big farm in North Carolina, with an opportunity to do that. I could take all this and put it in a building out there. But I'd be walking away from all of it. I mean, the sound and, but I don't know. It's very fluid. I'm not going to say there's any.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. I'm going to be 55 next month.
Right.
My dad is going to be 96. My mom just turned 90. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. We are of that age, and we may have the best of intentions and the best, like, oh, I'm going to do this audio thing until such and such time in this place. But the external factors are a factor.
Family, 100%. Yeah.
Family, it causes us to just, shift in our thinking and our planning. But like we've discussed in this interview, is that you are in a fantastic position, because you could, at the drop of a hat, you could either sell the building, rent the building.
Yep. And
that would be a whole nother story in itself.
100%. I probably wouldn't do that, but I could. Sure, I could rent the thing out. And I have people that come in here and work, and so I'm in a sense doing that. But I keep a pretty tight control over who's in here and what they're doing, just because I need it to all work, and just because and it's like my whole life is in here, all my stuff, all my guitars, all my things. Even going way back to the beginning, when I was on one of a 19-person intern staff, the downside of that was stuff was always getting broken. And who broke, what happened? Speaker's blown. What happened? So that was a lesson I learned, was like kind of keep a lockdown on that stuff. I fix everything in here that I possibly can. Obviously there are circumstances where I have to send it back, but I just had both my distressors open 2 nights ago doing switches and these memory caps. I've redone faders on my board twice, so I'm always really intimately involved with everything from that level to all the wiring to everything, knowing where everything is. And I rely on being able to fly in here 15 minutes before a session, turn it all on, start up the computer, and we're ready to rock. Like, it would drive me bananas if I did all that and like stuff was out of place and the computer I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it works.
Of all the different tasks involved in audio, mixing, mastering, tracking, whatever it is, what's your favorite? What of all of those do you prefer to do?
Nobody's ever asked me that. That's a great question. I really love all 3 of them for really different reasons. There's so much fun and joy and discovery and everything in all of those tasks. But I will say, when you are part of a project from the ground up, let's say you might just be the engineer, but usually you're in there. Maybe you don't, I never ask for a producer credit, any of that kind of stuff, unless it's something that's laid out in advance. But some of you ends up in that project, whether it's just mic selection, whether it's like, hey, should I do this or should I do that? Hey, try this harmony part, or hey, what that solo was, whatever you did there, try do that again, so you end up, and so then when you get to mix something that you've been there for the creation of, and then, then you get to master it, because I kind of look at mixing and mastering, to me, they're part of the same equation. Now, I used to send out all my mastering. I started to view all that differently, but that's probably another conversation. But I love all of it. The only time that, like, mixing something, I won't say it's a drag, because it's just what we do, is when you get something in that has not been tracked well, or it has a lot of problems that you have to fix, or you have to do a massive amount of tuning, or you're in RX, isotope, trying to get rid of all the extraneous noises that shouldn't be, you know what I mean? Like, that can be kind of not fun. But again, it's just your tool set. So I love mixing things when it's either been tracked really well, and the music is great and it's working, or things that I've tracked, because invariably I'm trying to do that. I think over the years you learn how to track having mixed a bunch of stuff you tracked. You know what I mean? Like you've made all those mistakes and you're just like, I'm not going to do that again. You know, like let's just get the sounds great to begin with. I'm big on that, big on tuning drums, big on having guitars and basses intonated. I'll sit here. I have a strobe tuner. If somebody comes in, I'll sit and do it. You know what I mean? I'm like, your guitar, like, we got to work on it. Like there's no point in tracking one song, one part of one song with the intonation way out of whack on this guitar, because let's just don't do it. So either pick a guitar off the wall or give me 15, 20 minutes and I'll fix it. You know what I mean? So mixing things that I've tracked, that I've worked on, is a lot of fun. And then mastering things where we all love the mix. It's just easy and fun. And so I do love each one of the processes. I don't know that I love any one more than the other. It comes down to the project. It comes down to people. I mean, this whole business comes down to people. It comes down to just us interacting with other people, you know? And if somebody's project is wonderful, it's usually they're a wonderful person and the whole experience is wonderful and you find the positive in it, and it either blows you away because it's just amazing in so many different ways, or, you know, you're on the same wavelength as the person. And then it all is like cake at that point because it's fun.
Yeah. How do you set your rates?
I just try to sort of see what everybody else is doing, and I try to see what I think the market will support. It's competitive, man. It's so super competitive. So it's tough. I should probably charge more, but I just try to charge. I work so much with working musicians. The money's tough, man. The music business is really tough. You know, I work with a lot of people who are out there playing 6 nights a week, you know, lifers, still making the same money in a club they made 20 years ago. And then, of course, you know, you spend all this time and money and effort on a product, and then at the end of the day, it goes on Spotify and you can't ever make any of your money back. So, you know, it's tough.
Isn't that the case?
So it's hard. It's hard with the, you know, I want to stay busy. I want to keep working. Work brings in more work. So I'll go a little lower on my rates, and I'll work with people on stuff and just to keep working on it. But there is a line I won't cross. Like I'm not going to, you know, I'd rather just stay busy and keep working, keep doing stuff.
Is it best for you to do hourly or daily?
I do daily and I do hourly. As you know, and this is true of any occupation, it's hard to give somebody a final cost for something that you just don't know what it's going to entail, you know? So yeah, if we're all the way done tracking and we've done the production and we're, you know, and I can package up a mix master job, you know, being confident that I can estimate pretty much what it's going to take. It's hard to do that, you know, just for like on day one of a record, because you don't know. Is the guitar player going to want to come back 6 times and redo all the guitar stuff? Is the singer, you know, who knows? Or are they going to go in there and play it and that's it? And you know, it's such a variable with time.
Yeah. And do you ever diversify away from music and go into, you know, voiceovers or podcasts or any of that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. I have done some of all of that in the past, but music seems to be what I get called for the most. I mean, I'm capable of doing any of that stuff. I've done film, you know, ADR for film. I've done lots of different things like that, but I don't know. Just, I guess I'm a music guy. I guess that's what I get hired for.
Yeah. And what's your favorite part of all of this?
I mean, I just love music and I love creativity and I love being my own boss, and I kind of love all of it. I love playing music. I love guitars. I love gear. I love the mental challenge of either coming up with a killer part for something on the bass or the guitar or the keyboard. I love the challenge of writing vocal harmony. I love to mic a drum set with a really great drummer and then just sit back and go, yeah, that's what we want, you know. There's kind of like none of it I don't like. I really like all of it. And I talk to young people a lot because I get people that, and I've always got young people around, like kind of, as I don't really call them interns. I don't really do interns so much, but just like colleagues, you know, people that are kind of like I was when I was that age. I love all of it. And I think if you're going to go into this crazy business, and you have to love all of it, and you have to be really curious, and you have to be willing to, you know, you get your hands dirty learning how to fix stuff and run stuff and all that, you know.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
Well, for the audience, link will be in the show notes to the studio. So if you're ever in the Boston area and you want to hire Will, you can do that. Or if you just want to, peruse his website and check out what he's up to, head on over there. Hey, Will, great to meet you. Thank you so much for making time for me today. It's great to hear your story and how your perspective on things. And if I'm ever in the Boston area, or next time I'm in the Boston area, I should say, I will ring you up.
Please do, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great to meet you in person or ish, and great to talk. And thank you for the interest. Really, honestly.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You take care.
Okay. Talk later.